Yeah, this really makes me think about like how you said nobody wants to see someone urinating in a restaurant, especially when you're with your wife and your kids. It's very easy to feel offended by that. And oftentimes you want to like show your wife and your children that you're protecting them. So you make a comment, you yell something like, "Hey, don't do that. Cover up." And then the person yells back at you, and now the ego is feeling threatened, and it just continues. Just one person says one thing, and then they say and they say and they say, and before you know it, it becomes physical. So just your ability to look at people that are doing things that they're not in any way in your space, but they are. He could have been 30 feet away urinating, and now you yell at him. So just really controlling what you say to who. And if you can, instead, just go park somewhere else, drive around the backside of the building, enter through the other side, change restaurants. You know what I mean? Wait 30 seconds until he's done peeing. So anything you can do to avoid talking to anybody, because it's so easy to feel offended. We don't know what the man who was urinating felt when I think he was checked, right? He was spoken to about not urinating.
Right.
And we don't know what Terry was going through in that moment. Who knows? He could have had a big argument with his boss, or something's happening in his own world. And when that man didn't stop urinating or gave him the finger or something, who knows what happened? All of a sudden, now he has to defend himself by
Right.
how
You can't talk to me that way in front of my wife and kids.
There you go.
Yep. Yeah, I always urge people to keep in mind, children will do this thing, right? Any of us who have kids have seen our kids do this. They'll take a glass of juice or something and put it on the edge of a table, like 49% over the edge of the table, and they walk away. And we know what's going to happen. The cup is going to fall off the table and make a big mess that we're going to have to clean up. Children don't think that way. They don't have the life experience. But as adults, we need to apply what I call maturity of foresight. We need to be able to, kind of predict the future, realize how things might escalate, how things might go sideways. And you don't know who that other person is. You don't know what kind of day they're having. You don't know how they might react to something that you think is perfectly normal. And the difficulty is that once you're engaged in that physical confrontation, to some extent, you've lost control of your future, right? You've just incurred two risks you were not incurring a moment before. One of them is a risk of dying in a fight. I mean, you're in a fight. There's no magic pixie dust that says you're going to win. You can do things like learn BJJ to reduce your risk of losing the fight damn close to zero, but it's never zero. I mean, the guy could suddenly come up with a knife, and then it's, the whole equation has changed. Things have gotten much more complicated. So you've just incurred a greater than zero risk of death, and you've incurred a greater than zero risk of going to jail for the rest of your life if you end up killing that person. And of course, you can reduce the risks of going to jail by learning the law of self-defense. That's what we teach here. But it's never a 0% risk. So the moment you're engaged in that fight, you've just incurred those two risks, a greater than zero risk of death, greater than zero risk of going to jail, that you weren't incurring a moment before. And I just urge people to think there are circumstances in which it's worth incurring those risks, but there are not a lot of them. So if you're going to incur those risks, make sure you're doing it in an informed way. And frankly, that you've prepared yourself to deal with those risks competently.
Yeah, our belief here at Gracie University is that most street fights are avoidable, most 99%. And that you talked about the foresight, you said?
Yeah.
Right. The ability to have that foresight and to kind of look at where things might go and, turn the other way and ignore it. And it's interesting because there's just so much stress. Everybody is so stressed out with so many things, whether it's your work, your relationship, your children, who knows, your weight. Everything is stressing everybody out. So this foresight is a nice thing to be able to, hey, that guy's having a bad day. Let me just avoid him. But because you are also caring so much, you get caught up in the words, in the swearing and the pushing and the verbal words first. And that's one of the other benefits of jiu-jitsu is that you're able to kind of blow off some steam, and you're able to, it's very meditative in that way, in that you might be stressed out, but because you can be physical with friends and you can learn this art, you might be driving home, and because you just spent an hour working out and doing jiu-jitsu, somebody cuts you off and they flip you off. Right. How you respond to them is much different than if you just spent the whole day behind a desk, right? Not performing to the level that your boss wants you to perform to, and you're getting, I guess, all kinds of corrections from your boss, or you blow it off because you just spent an hour sweating and life is good. And you say, you know what? They're having a bad day. I'm feeling good about myself. And you go home. So I've had so many people tell me that they feel better when it comes to the arguments with people at work or family or their children. They just respond differently to people's pain because of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
You can kind of be more patient, right? You have the luxury of patience. And you mentioned this earlier. I'd like to circle back to that, where you were saying you thought about a concealed carry permit, but you feel like with the skills you have, you can afford to wait. You can afford to be patient.